In the heart of the woods, a chance encounter between a hunter and a bear took an unexpected turn. Initially gripped by fear, the hunter soon discovered that the bear was not a threat, but instead begging him for assistance. What he did next is shocking. In the heart of the unforgiving woods, a lone hunter named Adam found himself in a dance with the unknown. The hunter's senses were heightened as he heard terrifying sounds echoing across the forest, crying eyes that seemed both inhuman and desperate. Despite the warning bells in his mind, curiosity overwhelmed fear and urged him forward. With each cautious step, he grew closer to the noises until he stumbled upon a scene that went far beyond terror. A bear, trapped in a snare, tied with chains and barbed wire, beyond recognition. Every movement caused the bear to cry out in pain. The hunter's pulse quickened as he stood face to face with the creature. On any other day, he would have been thrilled to have the opportunity to hunt a bear, but what he was witnessing wasn't hunting, it was pure torture. The bear was pleading for help. The hunter set aside his initial apprehension, ignoring the lingering fear. He carefully approached the distressed bear. Its labored breaths and anguished growls intensified as the hunter carefully surveyed the complex web of snares, chains, and barbed wire entangling the creature. It became evident that an act of kindness would not be enough. He would need to dismantle the gruesome trap from the ground up, which could take hours. As he attempted to draw nearer, the bear lashed out with a powerful swipe, a desperate attempt to protect itself from what it perceived as another threat. Then Adam did something shocking. He lowered his hunting gear and weapons, the only defenses he had, and placed them on the ground. The act of disarming himself served as a kind gesture, a promise that he meant no harm. The bear gradually calmed. The poor creature had met enough hunters during its life to understand that they were only dangerous if they held items in their hands, and this human's hands were now empty. Its eyes now held a glimmer of recognition, a silent acknowledgement of the connection forming between them. But this didn't change the fact that Adam was putting himself in danger. Any sane person would refuse to get this close to such a large, unpredictable beast, and yet he couldn't seem to resist. The man who had taken up hunting as a pastime was now staring into the eyes of a creature that bore the scars of his sport, and it left him heartbroken. Working methodically, the hunter cut through the snare first, each strand resisting and unwilling to release its grip. The air was heavy with the scent of fear and the metallic tang of blood that stained the bear's fur. Every movement carried the weight of uncertainty and risk, but one by one, the chains clattered as they fell away. Adam then moved on to the barbed wire. Upon closer inspection, it appeared that the wire had begun digging into the bear's flesh. The animal's cries intensified as Adam painstakingly worked on removing each twisted strand. He could feel the bear's muscles tense with each tug and delicately moved through the wire, careful not to cause any further harm. The realization of the responsibility he had taken upon himself settled in, yet he could not bring himself to regret the decision. Finally, the last piece of barbed wire was removed, and the bear, now freed from its painful restraints, slumped to the ground. As Adam stepped back, sadness washed over him as he bore witness to the full extent of the bear's wounds. Its fur was marred by deep gashes. There were punctures where the barbed wire had bitten into its flesh, and the bear's limbs, once powerful and untamed, were bruised, swollen, and weakened. It was a stark contradiction to the wilderness that Adam had been romanticizing. Each cut he made had been a painful realization, exposing both the brutality of the traps and the impact of his own actions. The thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of a successful hunt, all of it now seemed trivial in comparison to the living, breathing consequences before Adam. Now kneeling beside the bear, he extended a hand, hesitant and filled with shame. Sorry this happened to you," were the only words he could offer. The creature, though weary and exhausted, responded by melting into Adam's touch. It was likely the only kindness it had been shown in a very, very long time. It took a few minutes before the bear was ready to move. Adam observed the animal struggle to rise but waited patiently. He wasn't going to leave it behind to fend for itself, because other hunters would eventually come across the creature and not be as forgiving as him. And that was if the wild didn't get to the bear first. To his surprise, the bear trusted Adam and began to follow him back through the woods. As they approached his secluded cabin, Adam reached for his phone and dialed the number of a local wildlife clinic, pleading for urgent assistance. The clinic quickly dispatched a team to his location to assess the bear's condition. When the wildlife rescue team arrived, they immediately tranquilized the bear and carefully examined it. The team determined that it had likely been trapped in that agonizing manner for days, left to endure hunger, pain, and isolation. Infection had set in, and stitches were deemed necessary to prevent further complications. Without immediate intervention, there was a high probability that the bear could lose a limb. Together, they carefully loaded the bear onto a specialized transport vehicle and arrived at the clinic 30 minutes later. There, veterinarians and wildlife experts collaborated to provide the bear with the care it desperately needed. The wounds were cleaned, antibiotics administered, and stitches applied with painstaking precision to close the gaping injuries. To Adam's dismay, after completing their work, the wildlife experts revealed an unsettling truth. The bear, they suspected, was not an isolated victim. Over the past few weeks, there had been several reports coming in of other wildlife who had similar, if not identical, injuries. These were acts of cruelty likely being inflicted by the same person, an individual who enjoyed causing harm. The revelation that other animals had been subjected to the same fate infuriated Adam. The anger that welled up within him fueled the determination to not only save this bear, but to actively seek justice for the crimes committed against innocent wildlife. The man who had entered the woods as a hunter emerged as a healer, and in that moment, he promised to never let such atrocities go unchecked again. In the following days, the bear remained heavily sedated and under close observation at the clinic. Adam, now an unexpected advocate, visited regularly. He was told that without his timely intervention, the bear likely wouldn't have made it another 24 hours. He found comfort in the idea that he had helped to get the beast into recovery, but still, his guilt was not entirely resolved. As the bear gradually regained strength, the clinic staff discussed the possibility of releasing it back into the wild once it made a full recovery. But Adam rejected this idea, stating there was no point in releasing the bear when someone was still terrorizing its home. The poor creature would likely fall into another trap, which meant all of this treatment would be for nothing. While the staff agreed it was out of their hands, they simply did not have the space or resources to house the bear for more than a few days. Without a second thought, Adam embarked on a race against time to find the perpetrator before the bear's release. Armed with the evidence gathered by the clinic, he took his findings to the police, animal control, and even his local hunting community. Appalled by the malicious acts, the hunting community unanimously agreed to halt their hunting activities for a period of time. They pledged to report any suspicious activity in the forest, hoping to narrow down the search for the criminal. In the meantime, law enforcement officials would investigate the reported incidents and collaborate with animal control to coordinate their efforts. They assured Adam that every possible measure within their authority would be taken to apprehend the perpetrator and put an end to the spree of cruelty. Word spread like wildfire, and pressure began to mount against the local government to intervene and address the escalating crisis. However, the responsibility seemed to fall solely on Adam's shoulders. He set up surveillance cameras in the most popular hunting spots of the forest, but as days turned into nights, the footage yielded nothing. His frustration grew. It seemed as though the tormentor had vanished into the shadows and left no trace behind. One fateful night, Adam was abruptly awakened by a rustling sound outside his window. His senses heightened, he peered into the darkness and caught sight of a figure disappearing into the trees. Adrenaline surged through his veins as he realized that this might be the break he had been waiting for. Without a moment to waste, he grabbed his flashlight and followed the fleeting silhouette into the heart of the woods, determined to unmask the antagonist and put an end to the reign of terror consuming his town. The figure ahead moved with an almost supernatural grace, disappearing and reappearing like a phantom. Suddenly, the rustling sound ceased, and an eerie silence settled over the forest. The figure had vanished, leaving Adam standing alone in the midst of towering trees. It was then that a faint glow caught Adam's attention in the clearing ahead. He discovered a makeshift campsite illuminated by the soft light of a lantern. The remnants of a recently extinguished fire still smoldered, and the lingering scent of burnt wood hung in the air. As Adam approached, he noticed discarded tools, a set of wire cutters, a coil of barbed wire, a toolkit that mirrored what was used to cause the animal's injuries. His heart raced as he examined the campsite, realizing that he was on the verge of unmasking the person responsible. Adam reached for his phone, capturing images of the campsite as evidence. He documented every detail, ensuring that the authorities would have undeniable proof needed to bring the individual to justice. As he prepared to leave the campsite, a sudden sound caused him to freeze. A twig snapped, and he extinguished his flashlight, cloaking himself in the cover of darkness. He held his breath as footsteps began to approach. A man emerged from the shadows, moving stealthily towards the campsite, clad in dark clothing. The intruder was oblivious to Adam's presence. Adam waited until the figure had sat down at the campfire before he lunged forward. He caught the intruder off guard and tackled him to the ground, trying his best to restrain him. A brief struggle ensued, the dark-clothed figure attempting to break free. But Adam held firm. He wasn't allowing any more animals to be hurt. In the end, the perpetrator found themselves overpowered, subdued by the unexpected force. Adam called the police and informed them of what had happened, instructing them to meet him at his cabin. He then forced the man to his feet and began the walk back home. The police awaited the arrival of the captured perpetrator. As Adam emerged from the shadows with the criminal in tow, the officers took charge, ensuring the swift and secure transfer of the man into custody. Thankfully, the collaborative efforts of Adam, the police, and the humane officers proved effective. Now facing the consequences of his actions, the perpetrator was coerced into leading the officers through the woods to reveal the locations of any remaining traps. He cooperated in disarming them, perhaps motivated by guilt or a desire to mitigate the severity of their charges. But as they made it to the last trap, relief washed over Adam, the police force, and the animal control officers. No other animals had fallen victim. As the sun broke on the horizon, casting a gentle light over the once tormented woods, Adam stood amidst the clearing. The captured perpetrator faced the consequences of his crimes as he was led away by the authorities. In the coming days, the bear, alongside other wildlife that had fallen victim to the sinister traps, was released back into the wild. A sense of relief washed over Adam as he watched the forest surge with life once again. He watched the creatures return to their natural habitat, free from the threat that had disrupted their lives. The criminal faced the judicial system, the charges against him stacking up. 5 counts of animal cruelty in violation of the Preventing Animal Cruelty and Torture Act. As the evidence was presented, the severity of the crimes was clear. The judge handed down the worst sentence he could, 7 years for each count, leading to a total of 35 years behind bars. In the coming months, the community rallied together to ensure that such evils would never happen again. A local initiative was born, advocating for the outlawing of inhumane ways of trapping and hunting. Due to the growing pressure from their citizens, the local government passed a policy that aimed to preserve the integrity of the forest and protect the wildlife who called it home. With the new legislation in place, the community gradually returned to normalcy. The woods once plagued by the sinister traps triumphed over cruelty. Adam found peace in the positive changes that had taken root. The bear, now free from the scars of captivity, roamed the woods alongside its fellow creatures, redeemed. As seasons changed and the wounds inflicted upon the forest began to heal, Adam continued to visit the woods, not as a hunter, but as a guardian. The story of the bear, Adam, and the community served as a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there would always be a new dawn. What a suspenseful tale! If you were in Adam's position, faced with a choice between following a path of compassion or turning a blind eye, what decision would you make and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story inspiring, drop a like and subscribe. See you next time.